Yeah, I'll do, but then she's going to shoot it that way, and then I'll do clips. I'm going to do editing this year.
And plus I'm recording
He's
some
recording.
too. So
Yeah, he's just going to turn them all into reels.
Yeah. No, I'll send it to you so you can take clips from everything.
Okay. All right. Are we ready?
Ready as you ever be.
We might be friends on Facebook. I recognize it could be.
That's
All
how
right.
close
Or
you guys are.
Instagram, or I mean,
So how do you want to be introduced, as Ashley Barnes, Master Blender for Curly, or
Sure.
do you want a grander?
I don't know if there's a grander one. That one would probably come up with something.
Grand exalted.
Blender.
Blender. Well, he said he said master. So
Well, because they don't make blender.
Yes. Well, actually, that would be a good question for you. I'm sorry.
Ask it. We just started.
Well, hello, everybody.
We're the Scotchy Bourbon Boys here. We got Super Nash, Roxy. We have Ashley Barnes, Master Blender of Curly. And we have
Martin Duffy. Martin Duffy. Esquire.
Martin has been a friend of the podcast from when we were relapsed.
This is Alan Bishop, head alchemist at Spirits of French Lick. Be on the lookout for our brand new bottled and bond Solomon Scott rye whiskey. Made from a mash composed of 65% rye, 35% corn, and 5% victory malt. This 5-year-old 100 proof rye whiskey is a throwback to early 1800s style rye whiskeys of the Ohio Valley. Named after the legendary Daisy Spring Mill distillery owner turned moonshiner Solomon Scott of Paoli, Indiana. Remember, drink responsibly and never drink and drive.
It's sure fun to watch. We love what we do, we're drinking every brew. Man, we talk some shit, but we're telling the truth. Yeah, we're the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, raising some hell and making some noise. Yeah, we're the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. We're here to have fun and we hope you enjoy. We're here to have fun.
And people tell me all the time, we can't afford Glencarin. I don't think we can afford. My podcast has Glencarin.
Yeah.
It's like, well, they break and people steal them. Well, people are supposed to steal them so that they remember your podcast. That's your call.
It's an honor.
Yes.
Yep.
You ever make a flyer with your name and everything on it? That's advertisement.
Yes.
So whether it's a glass or something.
Yep, exactly. So we're here. Just start and just tell us about yourself, how you got to this point. Because he was just giving me. I mean, you were at Four Roses, right?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, I was, and before that, I was at Buffalo Trace. So
Wow.
I've
I
been a
didn't know
few
that.
Who did
places.
you work with at Buffalo Trace?
Chris Fletcher, who is now master distiller at Jack Daniel's,
Okay.
he actually hired me in, along with Drew Mayville, and of course I worked with Harlan there, and that was about 2.5 years I spent there.
Okay.
That's where I learned that I could taste differently than everybody else, and I started learning classic techniques for blending with Drew, and I really fell in love with blending there. My role was quality control, so my job was to taste everything, and I did all the analytical type testing, so GC, they didn't have a mass spec, I think it was just GC there, and run all the reports and things for the government. So that was really fun. It was really my first introduction to this industry as a whole. I had ended up in the pharmaceutical world before that, and they had hunted me over. You got a question?
So do you when you started out, did you get a degree, or did you just what was your?
So
I wanted to be a veterinarian my whole life. Never considered anything else. And I had an accident my senior year that kind of killed that. And so I did a focus in chemistry, molecular biochemistry, really, and studied traumatic brain injuries and Alzheimer's disease for a little while before I was like, okay, this really isn't for me. Floated around, ended up in pharmaceutical, as a lot of us chemists do. And I really didn't like that. But I was like, ooh, booze or drugs? Let's go to booze.
It's much more interesting, right?
Yeah.
There's just so much more, and like you said, booze is designed for making people happy.
Yeah.
Well, technically.
I mean, I was
Kinda.
making like nicotine lozenges and government back supply of like, antibiotics and things.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really that fun. And
Creative.
it was zero creativity, and the hoops we jumped through and all the additional tests we had to do it was really not fun.
Hey, Ash, when you were getting into blending, did you have any kind of routine, any kind of process training to expand your sense of smell, sense of taste? Over in Scotland, they do a lot of this, sensory sessions constantly.
Yeah.
Is that something that you would do?
So I do that now, and I teach that, and I share it with others, but I did not have that in the beginning, formally. But once I started, working with Drew some and really falling in love with blending, and realized I could taste things differently, I started to look into the compounds that I was tasting. And okay, well, this compound should taste like this. Well, what does a cinnamon stick versus a ground cinnamon taste like? Going through my spice cabinet, if I bought a lemon, I would smell the peel, I would smell the pith. Okay, now we're going to cut it open. Hey, this one's been on the counter 2 weeks. What does it smell like? And I kind of did it on my own, just independently, because I'm a nerd. But I found it very, very useful. And I would love to see more of that in our industry to help people. And I like to teach those classes.
Well, there's a lot of people coming out of the scientific, courses or degrees that Brent Elliott, who was like that, and even Ross over at Barton's right now. Same thing. Right. And Pat, Doctor. I mean, as far as yeast, there's no one better. It's like if you got a problem, you can fix it. It is. But you look at him, there's no way you think that. But he's part. A lot of times, you just become part of the culture and of bourbon and whiskey. But so you go in and I find this. I'm intrigued that's the same as you are, because it's probably one of the strictest rules to make bourbon, right? And you would think, like, to make other spirits, those rules aren't quite as strict, but yet there's so many different things. Like, the variables are endless, and that's the part that's so always intriguing to me. Was what does, like you said, what does that compound that Old Forester has that makes it taste like bananas? And it, then you realize how a distiller can help out, but then when you're a blender, now my question is, you have the ability to taste things, but like at Heaven Hill right now, I think her name is Tully. She tastes through everything, and she's been in there forever, but she can taste the negative things. And so the question is, as a blender, it's probably most important to be able to taste the compounds that when the spirit's not right than it is to taste all those other things when the spirit's, when it is right or correct, because not everybody can taste that.
Right. And honestly, as a blender, I think that's what starts to set you apart from a taster to a blender to a master blender, is we can do both. And so when I left, I was with Four Roses for almost 5 years, just a couple months shy of 5 years. Brent Elliott's actually the one who hired me. I love Brent to death. Right. I got to learn so much from him, so much from Jim, and Al Young. Everybody has their own little niche. But Four Roses is really where I started to look at the more positive compounds, because we had all our yeast codes. So I was like, what is it that this yeast is imparting on this bourbon that's giving it that uniqueness? And when does that shine through? What's a precursor to it? When I'm tasting it at 2 years old, is this truly going to be where I need it to be at 4, 5, 10 years old to be the product we want it to be? So that's where I really started doing that side of it. A big part of my job was to taste the distillate. And okay, are there any faults? I'm very sensitive to like musty, moldy. And sometimes it's like, okay, I can taste that, but no one else on the panel may have been able to taste it. So we're going to be okay because you're just super sensitive. But to be able to go on and be able to taste that, that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And then when I left Four Roses, a lot of in consulting, Monica Wolf and I started a consulting company, and I worked with craft distillers, non-producing brands, specifically to bring all the knowledge I'd gained between Buffalo Trace and Four Roses to these craft and smaller producers, because it was just, I love to share, I love to educate, and I don't think anyone should gatekeep. We are all one big family, we all help each other, and so that's what we did. And the bulk of what I did initially as a consultant was tasting distillate. It's like, okay, let's go look at your fermentation records a little bit, because you've got some stuff going on, and maybe revisit your cleaning methods, because you got some bacterial stuff going on too. So yeah, I think that's kind of how it starts. You start tasting, you start identifying things, and then you move a little further and you start to specifically look for negative things. Those tend to stand out a lot more, and then you really dial into the compounds and congeners that are developing through yeast, through fermentation, through distillation, and how hot you're running, how cool you're running, and then of course the oak and toast and char, and we could go on for days.
Ash, have you met Maureen Robinson yet?
I don't. Where's she at?
She just started at Kentucky Owl.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart. Wait, I do
tiny
know
woman. When I worked with Diageo, she was vatting all of the single malts.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of my favorites was the Talisker 175th, and she did it. Mm-hmm. And I got to meet her once in Ireland, and then again now. But I think it would be fascinating for the two of you to do like a seminar on it, because to see the difference between what the Scots. She was just telling me yesterday, she's looking into. She has to adjust her thinking a little bit, because the priorities in bourbon are very different from the priorities in Scotch. And then there's a lot of common ground, of course. But I think it would be really a fascinating thing for just seeing you two kind of talk about it.
So she and I have had a couple very interesting conversations. And I told her, I was like, we just need to take a day and powwow together. She came from pharmaceuticals as well.
Yeah.
And so we have a very similar background, and she's so fun to talk to. I was like, we need to just like pair up and do something together. So yeah, I would love to teach a class with her.
I think that'd be great.
I think it would be fun, because she's got so much experience, and I just want to pick her brain.
Oh yeah, it's huge. Plus she was working with the top dogs at Diageo for I don't know how many years she was at it. 30, I guess. I don't know when she left the pharmaceutical industry to get over into the whiskey industry, but she and Jim Beveridge were the two main powerhouses as far as blending at Diageo, and you're talking about brands like Johnny Walker and all the classic malts, J&B. So I mean, I'm assuming she was involved with everything.
Yeah.
Not that you want to cut the guys out, but it would be really fun to do it with just all women.
We want to cut the
Yeah. And I say that because Jeff always asks me to taste the distillate, because he's like, you can taste things in the distillate that I can't. And so he knows that I have.
He's the one that comes up with it. One, she's cooked her whole life. So
and I also work with essential oils with my clients, so I smell everything in my entire essential oil and herbal, because I work with herbals, and so that has trained my nose and taste a little bit.
There are many hotels that we weren't able to stay in that I could have stayed in with no problem.
I'm like, it's moldy in here, it's musty in here.
Yeah, there's an old story where a husband and wife walked into a hotel room. The wife will be able to smell the dead mouse in the wall.
And that's funny you should say that.
Funny you should say that because we went to my daughter's apartment in New York, and I walked in. The very first thing I said to her was, "You have that nice on." And she's like, "No, I don't." And I'm like, "Yes, you do." I said, "Give me a minute." So I'm like a dog, right?
Yeah, as one does.
He literally stopped and said, "They are behind the stove," and made him put the stove on, and there were two behind the stove.
I don't think I would know what a dead mouse smells like.
It's horrible.
It's bad.
She pulled it out. It was on one of those.
Yeah, it's a very distinctive smell.
Oh.
And I can't imagine why she couldn't smell it.
She was nose blind to it.
Yeah, that happens. I'm into cycling.
But see, no.
Yeah.
That is,
I mean, think dirty diapers. You become nose blind to
Yeah,
certain things.
Your single friend comes over and you're doing the. They're like, "Oh my god!" And you're like, "What?"
Exactly.
but this is the thing with nosing. I mean, to me, it doesn't matter whether it's men or women. I think it's a matter of just how talented you are. Obviously, Ashley has loads of experience, and so does Maureen. And that's the fascinating thing to me. However, it is interesting that women do have a step up on men. They're just born with a keener sense of smell.
Better smell automatically.
Right, but men can train themselves if they put their minds to it.
Yeah.
Recognizing those
Well, and it has,
offsprings.
and it's hormones. During pregnancy, you have the heightened sense.
Yeah.
They did a test where they had 10 women blindfolded, 10 mothers, new mothers, and they brought their babies up to their noses. They went down the line, the mothers had to identify the babies.
Oh, everyone could do it. Yep.
They could all do it. They did the same thing with the fathers. And I thought, that's interesting.
Well, that's,
All right.
There was one father.
So she's a science nerd, as you know I am.
Yeah,
So
it's she went into pre-vet.
well, I wanted to be a vet too. So
But now her journey took her to now she's a midwife, a home birth midwife, which is kind of cool. So, like getting back to.
Oh yeah, we don't want to talk about me. Yeah, talk about Ashley.
So are there better days than others? I mean, I find that myself. There's some days where it's like, holy crap, does this taste great? Like this is like I really taste, and then other days it's like I can't taste it. Like
So, and this is funny, we talked about women. Heather Green and I were talking last night about this exact same thing. Because with pregnancy, obviously, I have a heightened sense normally. During pregnancy, it is insane. And Lord love my husband, because it's bad. But even just hormonally, I feel like there are days that are better than others. And I can tell some days I'm like, I'm just off today. Most of the time it's like, oh, it's allergies, and I won't taste. If I'm not up to par, I will not taste. But I think it definitely has something to do with our hormones and things too.
I think there's some days where humidity or heat or how you're it's just like
what you've eaten has a huge role. Like I do not use little plug-in smelly things. My blending lab currently is in my house, so I don't burn candles. I don't do any kind of smelly things. I finally, having a now 5-year-old son, plus we have stuff in the bathroom, but that's the only place we can have smelly stuff in my house. Even though, the blending office, the blending lab is in one area. Even upstairs, it's in a totally different floor.
Overall. So we've gone through now the 4 roses. For me, the yeast strains make a big difference. And there's one OBSK, which I absolutely love. But pretty much the rest of the 4 roses, even though Brent is over there citing it, and it's a 4-rose single barrel, pretty much it's the heat and the spice that comes with the higher proofs of the single barrel. For whatever reason, it just tops off, and it hits a point where the taste becomes not. I love bourbon. So there's not even bad bourbons
No,
I
not
would
usually.
drink, right? But to take it to that where you're spending a lot of money on a bottle or whatever, those other yeast strains just don't do it for me. Now we had friends that did that and they absolutely loved it, but it was like I felt that their palates were completely burned out, and that's what allowed them to taste it.
You're just sensitive to a particular compound that they tend to gain. Now that could be from the yeast coast, but it also could be the naturally occurring microflora and fauna of the site in where they're fermentating and all of that. Because if it's specifically for roses, then there's probably something a little more going around, and it's just something you're sensitive to.
OPSK then.
That particular one.
See that and buy it.
So what's happening is the compound that you're particularly sensitive to likely is being I love pregnancy brain. It's converting. It is creating a new compound through that yeast code.
Okay.
It is just like when you add water to to open it up. So molecularly, that water is bonding to the congeners and compounds to create different ones. They might only slightly be different, or they might be completely different. But the molecules are more readily available to bond to water than they are alcohol. So when you're looking at that yeast code, it's providing the basis of those reactions to happen. That maybe that thing that you're a little more sensitive to doesn't happen in the K yeast code.
The other question is what do you use to between tasting to neutralize your palate? Now I find that when I drink water, it actually changes. Like if I just do straight water in between, I like the taste of water hitting my, but the next one I taste, it doesn't neutralize my palate.
So I do a couple things. I will take breaks, but I like to use, unsalted cracker type things. I'm non-pregnant and kind of gluten-free, so I found a particular gluten-free cracker I will use. Almonds are great, unsalted, of course, and just pacing yourself and knowing what you're comfortable with. Okay. If you are just starting to taste, don't plan to do 20 in a day. Take your time. I've worked up through many years, many tasting. I can sample, if I'm not blending, I can sample up to 90 in a day and be confident in my notes. But that has taken many years to get to. I also, when I'm tasting, I don't take very much. I'm talking maybe 1 milliliter, if that, if I were to measure it out. And I think that also plays a role. But I will pace myself. I will not, if I feel like I'm starting to get a little fatigued, I'll step away, go do a couple emails, come back to it. I am very old school. I've learned I like to handwrite all my notes out. I've tried to do them on the iPad, not the same. Give me a pen and a paper and leave me alone. So I will then type them into an Excel sheet so I have a record that's accessible. I work, of course, with EJ Curley. Lucky 7's another one of my brands, so I like to make sure that they have access to all my tasting notes for any single barrels that I pick. So,
well, if you ever want little tasting books, I have loads of them. I don't use them myself, so I've had them for the last 20 years.
I always love checking that stuff out.
I always get them, man.
I love them.
You can have them all.
I love any kind of book, any tool that anyone's used over the years. I love exploring it and looking into it. And is this something we can benefit from? Or if I'm teaching a class, is it something that I could show people? Hey, you're starting to learn this. How can we, would this help you to learn to start taking your own notes? Because I've developed my method, which is backwards for most people, but it works for me. I've tried other methods. I always come back to the same one. I'm a creature of habit.
So, Ash, this reminds me of something. I have a friend of mine over in Ireland, Fiona O'Connor. He goes, he wrote a whiskey book called The Glass Part. It's all about pots.
I know him.
You know?
You introduced me to him.
There you go. Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah, he gave me a book and signed it.
So he's paid by the government over there. That's pretty sweet. Basically, a professional student who he just goes around seeking out all that stuff. He looks for old documents, old notes, distillers' notes from all these past Irish distilleries, and he brings it all in. So he's found old mash bills and stuff. Now, as a blender, would you ever explore, if you had the opportunity, looking into old Irish stuff, old stuff from Scotland, Canada, now with the Japanese and, actually the whole world of whiskey that's opening up. Would you explore looking into that?
Always.
And try to incorporate it somehow?
So, absolutely. I love doing research, but it's funny you brought that up because I do have a brand called Two Worlds Whiskey that is specifically blended and created for the French palate.
Oh, really?
And yes, it was only released in France initially, but a lady, her name is Ashley Donahue from Louisville, lives in Paris. I won't go into her background. We can do that another day. But essentially, she was like, they need to know good bourbon. They don't know good bourbon. So she met Monica. Monica said, this has us written all over it. And the three of us kind of came together. The brand is her concept, her idea. And she said, this is what I want the whiskey. I want it to be for the French palate, to show them that bourbon is more than vanilla and caramel. So I said, cool. And we started researching. She would bring things to France from home, different bourbons, and have all of her friends taste and then bring that feedback to me. And then I did my own research. When do they drink bourbon? What does the French palate typically like? And so we used all of that to come together and create a bourbon. I searched for many different places for that particular brand. And we are now on the second release of the first edition. The second edition of it, which each batch is named after a ship that Lafayette brought over from France. The whole concept is based on the French-American Alliance. It's so cool. The second edition, we are finishing in a French barrel with some French red wine finish. It is delicious. That will be out soon. We are importing it back to the States, so a few bottles have made it back. And then the third edition will be both French oak and American oak, starting life in America, finishing in France, and doing a true, absolute back and forth. I did not bring samples of that, but I'm sure we can probably hook you up.
That would be great. So
squeaky wheel.
We're right at the time, but at the last question, Pete. I mean, you're a master blender, but also a super taster. What is Pete do to
I cannot.
So woman after my own heart.
I cannot. I've yet to find any form of peat that I could handle.
There is a place by him that's called Thornton, and the distiller, Ari, trained in Scotland, and they started out, and they've got an old brewery that Al Capone was using through Prohibition.
What about Joe Saltus's brewery?
Yeah, and so they're distilling. They started off with bourbon, but trained in Scotland. So they did this American single malt, but they put in from Illinois. That's right by where they are, and they're right on this. They're on the limestone quarry, that giant quarry, the largest limestone quarry, and they've got a limestone artesian well right on the site using all the water. But I got to sample it, and I'm the same way as you. Most people is just too acidy and
Which is weird from a guy from a group called the Scotchy Bourbon.
I'm not
gonna say. I wasn't gonna say that, but
I can find scotches I like.
No, I know.
Yes.
Actually, only a small percentage of Scotch actually uses peat. Only about 16%.
Almost killed me once. I swear to God, I was drinking gun oil that it was used.
Different, and Rustlin started doing it a while back. Now you have a heated bourbon in Kings County. And in the Southwest, we actually have Santa Fe spirits because they're mesquite. Smoked, probably from.
So I'm going to count on you when he bottles that I'll pay you for it, but get me that bottle. That is, who has an Illinois peat?
That's a first. You know? Even Westland was importing their peat from Scotland up until recently, and then they made a deal with the federal government that they could source peat out of the peat bogs in Washington State.
Right.
Well, it's not peat, but I've got 2 malt whiskey places that I've created their mash bills, and one of them started to come of age that I'm really excited about. So, and I've done
I love
some
single malts. I mean, they can be. There's just a deliciousness about. Yeah, I mean, there's
American
Yeah.
I like
to make it too.
I even like when you do a pot still bourbon 4-grain and you pick up those fruit notes that you will pick up from the Irish whiskey. You know, it just the pot still does that. You know, and that's why most Irish whiskey is pot still, right? Yeah, I mean, so.
Oh no,
right.
it's not. Well, I know it is. It is.
It is.
But you got to be careful. Single pot still whiskey. It's different from what the other Irish whiskey are doing. You've got a lot of single malt. Blends, but they have a thing called single pot still whiskey.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
It's great.
We'll look forward to your class. I'll take it.
I taught one Friday, and it was amazing. It was a really good class. It was sold out, and then people just kept coming in and standing there normally. I was like, oh, yeah.
It's excellent.
Yeah. Great.
All right.
I'll be teaching a class about how other people should be teaching classes.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. We'll teach the teachers.
Yeah.
I really think you and Maureen, that would be really cool.
I want to collaborate with her so much.
Isn't he like the best? That's what he does. He does his job while he hooks everybody up with everybody else.
Well, you know how Maureen and I met, like Monica. She was doing something and was talking with Maureen. I was like, you need to be my partner. And so, actually, we got a picture yesterday. Maureen came and hung out with us a little bit in the EJ Curley tent.
Oh, did you realize?
Well, I can tell you this. You've done a good job with EJ Curley because I absolutely love the bourbon, and it's just their, the blend is good. The small batch is
even
good.
have any left? Monica ran into her and Steve yesterday morning and said, let's went through all your product the first day.
Yeah, pretty much. We do have some. I think we'll make it through the day.
You guys, last year when you were here when they were selling last year, they were the talk of the whole festival.
Oh, yeah. No, you really were.
They loved everything that was going on. You know what I mean? So it was.
We're getting the fill this year. The same thing. We've had people asking if they could vote for the best 10.
Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. Show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. For if we don't find the next whiskey bar, I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die. I tell you, I tell you, I tell you we must die.
Hey, Scotchy Bourbon Boys fans, this is Alan Bishop, Indiana's Alchemist of the Black Forest. So I'm tuning in here today to tell you all about the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute channel on YouTube. If you're at all interested in the art of distilling, whether it be home distilling or professional distilling, and the intense geekery that goes into that process, then check out the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute on YouTube. I promise you're going to learn something you didn't know before about the arts.